Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube says that all of the country's 9 provinces have indicated they are ready for the start of the 2025 Matric exams tomorrow. The minister says that preparations are already at an advanced stage for the 185 marking centres across the country that will open between November 26th and 27th. Let's get more then on the Matric exams, the National Senior Certificate Assessments that start in the coming hours. Minister Gwarube, good to have you with us on the SABC tonight. So what is top of mind for you tonight with just a few hours to go before close to 1 million candidates sit for these exams?
Good evening, Tembegile, and good evening to SABC viewers. Of course, as is often said, the NSC Matric exams are a massive logistical undertaking. In fact, outside of the local government and national government logistics that the IEC rolls out, this is one of the largest ones. And so when we're talking about the state of readiness, we look at 2 measures. The one is learner readiness and the other one is system readiness. With learner readiness, of course, that is something that we track over the year. We look at the performance of learners against past years in term 1, term 2, term 3. We do what we call the last push in the third quarter, where we have autumn and spring classes, particularly to give support to learners around gateway subjects such as mathematics and science, as we're really trying to get the participation and the performance in those subjects higher up. And then when we talk about system readiness, then Tembegile, we're talking about a whole number of things. Number one, exam centers across both public and private schools. We talk about security measures of where matric papers and scripts are stored. We're talking about invigilators. We're talking about the actual marking centers that will be there. It's a 6-week-long process of both writing and marking and moderating before the actual release on the 12th of January. So top of mind is all of these logistics, because of course, even though you may plan very well, there are a number of things that do go wrong. For instance, you'll recall last year we had inclement weather in the Eastern Cape that prevented learners from being able to get to the exam centers. One of the things that the provinces are doing is to make sure that the alternative venues, in the event that there's either natural disasters or there's civil unrest or whatever the cause may be. And so we've got those contingency measures in place, including planning for load shedding, including for water outages. We've got those contingency plans in place. But of course, we are hoping for an incident-free exam period.
So it's a mammoth undertaking. Which part are you most nervous about?
I think for me, it's both. I think one, the learner readiness, of course, now it's now it's the day before, and so we are hoping that the class of 2025 is ready, and we are rooting for them, and we're wishing them well. Remember, this is the first post-pandemic class cohort. They began their grade 8 back in 2021 after COVID-19. So they too have had learning losses along the way. They didn't finish their grade 8 curriculum, but we've caught on, obviously, as the years have gone by. So that's the one thing, the learner readiness. Number 2, also I worry and I remain concerned, obviously, about learner safety, Tembegile, whether it is through protest action or learners trying to get to school. And of course, I just worry about whether or not all our 900,000 learners will be able to get to their venues on time and safely so. And then, of course, the system, there is issues around that we talk about, particularly around integrity. We don't talk about integrity and honestly only in terms of our learners, but we also talk about integrity to our invigilators, people who handle live exam papers, because that's when we've seen instances where we've had group copying, because sometimes people have the inclination to sell exam papers. So we've put measures in place to try and mitigate against those. But of course, these are the things that happens when, almost 1 million people are responsible and involved in such a massive undertaking.
I suppose measures can never be entirely foolproof in a system or an undertaking that involves so many people administratively and indeed the pupils themselves. You said today at the briefing that integrity is non-negotiable. The test will become how quickly you're able to recover, to respond when there are incidents. How well have you planned for that, the response to areas where there are problems?
So there are two things that I think are quite important. Number one, each province has established and is as part of a ProvJoc, so it's a combination of the departments, the police or community safety departments, one to deal with issues around safety, should those arise, because we know sometimes there can be unrest in our communities and we need to quickly deal with those things. And then there's other measures that perhaps people may not know, things like, for instance, if you have a pupil, if you have a learner yourself as an official or an invigilator, you are not allowed, you are barred from, who's in grade 12, you are barred from handling live exam papers. And we've also made sure that our security measures in those storage facilities are up to scratch. Each and every truck that is distributing exam papers is GPS tracked. We know exactly where it is, where it stops. And so those things are some of the things I think the team at the Department of Basic Education and in the provinces have really learned to perfect over the years since 1996. So those are some of the measures in place.
It's an exam in some ways for you, right? Because this will be the first cohort of matriculants who will sit for these exams after you've been in the position for just over one full year now. And there's always pressure for each group of grade 12s to do better than the previous ones. Do you feel pressure on that score personally?
Look, I mean, firstly, if we look at the learner readiness, when the team does it in terms of it's a mathematical equation where they look term on term. So they look at term 1 in 2024, how the learners performed versus term 1 of that current year. We are seeing a massive improvement in some areas. I'm also encouraged by the fact that we've seen a slight uptick in the participation of in mathematics in particular. I'm still not quite happy with the way we are. We've seen about 2,000 additional learners taking on mathematics. So for me, I think, Tembegile, I would answer this in this way. I'm less obsessed about the big number that gets revealed at the beginning of the year, but I'm mostly more obsessed about the quality of the passes. Are we getting right some of the things that we haven't gotten right? The participation in maths and science. Are we seeing the right upward trend or not? The fact that we've got more learners in the system than we did before. Those are markers of success that encourage me, but I think I'm less obsessed about what does that big number look like, and will I feel as though it's a personal failure if it's not an increase from the year before. But I really want us to start drilling deeper down into the actual content of those results that we get at the end of the year.
And what benchmarks then has the department set itself at a qualitative level beyond just the overall pass rate? What would be sufficient, satisfactory progress, in things like maths and science results, etc.?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I think firstly, more bachelor passes is really always a good thing because it allows learners a lot more different pathways for them to undertake. Of course, we have the real challenge of the fact that 900,000 learners are writing these exams. And of course, not all of them are going to find placements in institutions of higher learning. And so one of the work that Minister Manamela and I have started to do is how do we work together as the two departments that are in charge of the education system in improving the quality offering of TVET and community colleges. Because it's one thing producing learners who are leaving the system, but where are they going to go? If they're going to end up being in unemployment and not in training, we're not actually succeeding as an education system. And then, of course, as I said, more passes in mathematics and science and technology, particularly the gateway subjects. I would like to also see a much more stronger performance from our young boys studies, we've seen a drop-off in terms of performance of young boys in the system. And so that's been something that we've really zoomed in on. And of course, we'd like to see the provinces and all the 75 districts really increase their passing numbers. So for me, those are some of the quality markers that I think we need to look at. But just to close off by saying that we are not going to fix some of the endemic problems, Tembegile, in our education system by only tinkering when children are in grade 10, 11, or 12. We have to do the work right at the beginning. And so one of the things that I'm emphasizing is that quality foundations of learning will give us the results that we need. And so just simply focusing on this period is not going to give us that massive sort of shift that we are looking for. So that's why we have to focus on both the quality passes, but how do we grow the foundations of learning?
Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube speaking to us on the eve of the National Senior Certificate Exams. Thank you so much for your time.